Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you yet again another Discussion of the Week video segment right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly, as always, I'm here to bring you the latest in this week's Discussion of the Week video segment. Before I jump into this week's discussion topic, I just found out, I kid you not, I just found out about 2 minutes before starting up the camera that apparently the producers of Game of Thrones, they gave me a brief little shout out in an interview they did on IGN. So I will link that interview in the description box below. I haven't even read it yet. I just saw that they mentioned me by name. You know, it wasn't Otaku Assemble. They actually mentioned me by name, which is really cool. So I want to go ahead and I want to give a big thank you, a huge thank you to the producers of Game of Thrones. That would be D.B. Weiss and David Benioff. Thank you so much. And right quick, I want to go ahead and thank the YouTuber who informed me of this interview. This is Ivan Grozny the Fourth. Thank you so much for letting me know. It's really cool. It's really cool. So, anywho, now let's jump into this week's discussion topic. And this is coming from I Own the Spire. And he says, how about discussing the portrayal of minorities in fiction, whether they should be thrown in just to appear politically correct, the pros and cons of diversity and tokenism, and the good and bad examples of their portrayal. Should a fiction take place in a different world, including groups based off Africans or Asians, just because? Okay, so I've actually discussed minorities, the manner in which they're portrayed in media. I've discussed that before. I would go back to my discussion of the week, racial identity in anime and manga, and I believe in a couple of other videos I kind of discussed this topic. This is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to talk about minorities' portrayal, the manner in which they're portrayed, because like I said, I've discussed it before. What I will talk about and what I think this topic is at its core, what this topic is really about is presence, not portrayal. Let me go ahead and reiterate that. I think this topic is talking about minorities' presence in a story rather than the manner in which they're portrayed. So that's how I'm going to address this topic. So let's talk about the first question. How about discussing the portrayals of minorities in fiction, whether they should be thrown in to appear politically correct? Okay, here's the thing. I don't think necessarily that characters of different ethnicities need to be thrown in just to be politically correct. I mean, to use a good example of this, when you're talking about high fantasy is a genre that very seldomly features characters of other ethnicities. They're almost always Caucasian men and women, because that's what the genre dictates. I'm not saying that you can't throw minorities in there. Of course you can. My favorite example of this is the Earthsea series by Ursula K. Le Guin. I've mentioned multiple times that that's my favorite book series, and you will find that in her series, most of her characters are of dark complexion. Most of them. Like I said, I don't think that in that genre you need it. I don't think it's a necessity to add them in there just to be politically correct. That's not the case, because let's face it, depending on what that genre dictates, that's not being politically correct. Now, if you were to do a story that took place in, say, the Bronx, you know, the Bronx, New York, or Johannesburg, or something like that, then yes, you would have to have characters of other ethnicities, because that's what it's like in real life. You would have to then. I'll use another example. The comic book that I am currently writing takes place in South Texas. Now, you could argue that there doesn't necessarily have to be characters of different ethnicities in that story, but my cast of main characters are of different ethnicities. I have multiple ethnicities in that story. Because I want to ask you all a quick question. Any of you ever been to South Texas? I have. There's a lot of motherfucking minorities and different ethnicities in South Texas. Okay? I mean, for all intents and purposes, there are very few places in America nowadays where you can go that don't have multiple ethnicities. Now, I'm from New Orleans. New Orleans is a perpetual melting pot of fucking ethnicities. There are, I mean, even in high school, if you went to my high school and you were kicking it with me with my friends at our lunch table, you had me and my friend Justin, who are both African American. You had my friend James, one of my friends, James, he was Japanese American. My other friend James was Caucasian, but he was of Irish descent. My friend Ricardo was Hispanic, and my friend Paul was Caucasian. You see what I'm saying? And that's at one table. So, like I said, as far as political correctness goes, it depends on the genre. If the genre is a genre that mostly has Caucasian characters, then the necessity to have minorities, it's not necessarily there. But if you do have a story that is trying to be more realistic, that's taking place in the real world, like say New York City or Los Angeles or St. Louis or New Orleans or anything like that, then you would, I'm not saying that you have to, but if you're going for a realistic approach, then yeah, you can't just have one ethnicity, because that's not how it is in real life if you're going for realism. Now, the pros and cons of diversity and tokenism. Pros and cons. The biggest benefit to having different diversities in a series is that more people will be able to relate to it. Now, I'm not saying that people of different ethnicities can't relate to characters of different ethnicities, because like I said, to use Game of Thrones as another example, you know, I love the series. And in season 1, there are little to no African Americans in that series. Like I said, in season 1, I know for a fact that there is a central African American character in season 2, but in season 1, there are no African American characters. Yet I am able to relate to many of the characters. Like I said, I rep House Stark. I love the Starks. You see what I'm saying? Those are all Caucasian characters. But this is what I'm saying. If you have a story that has a diverse cast, it makes it easier for people of different ethnicities to gravitate towards it. To use an example, look at the Runaways from Marvel Comics, which was kind of like an inspiration for the book that I'm working on right now. They have a central African American character. They have a central Asian American character. You have Caucasian characters. I believe there's even an Hispanic or Latino American character. What I'm saying is, when people of different ethnicities see that there is a character of their own ethnicity in it, they'll at least look at it. And that's the biggest benefit. Like I said, they might not necessarily pick it up, they might not necessarily follow it, but if I'm reading a manga or if I'm watching an anime that has an African American character in it, I'm going to at least look at it at least once, and that's the biggest benefit to it. Another benefit is that it allows for you to explore different cultures. You can very well create a very enriching and a very deep story by exploring the cultures of those multiple characters. So that's another benefit. Like I said, it's those type of things are not essential to your story. I mean, your story might have absolutely nothing to do with the character's individual culture and background, but by having a diverse cast, you have a lot more material that you can pull from. So now, instead of just having a very linear plot-driven story with a say a cast of one ethnicity, by incorporating different ethnicities, now you realize, hey, there's a lot more things I can pull from. Now I can incorporate all these different subplots that extend from that person's background, from their cultural background, from their heritage. And so, like I said, now you have more to work with. It's like if you're a sculptor and you're trying to carve this beautiful sculpture from, a very small block. By incorporating these different elements, now you have a larger block to carve from. You have more to work with. That's another huge benefit. Now I'm going to address the cons. And here's my thing. It is very, very easy to fall into tokenism and to fall into stereotypes. I would highly recommend for anybody who is writing a story that has multiple ethnicities that are different from your own, please, it's not so much to research these ethnicities. That's not the case. But you need to observe these ethnicities. How can a Caucasian writer write an African American character better than an African American writer unless they know African American people? That type of thing, it's not something that you can simply research. You can't just go online and Google African American culture and create a very well developed African American character. Why? Because it's all stereotypes. It's all generalized. It's all tokenized. You have to observe these people firsthand. I mean, honestly, how can you do it if you're not around it? Same thing. To use another example, the comic I'm currently writing. How could I write a comic book that takes place in South Texas if I've never been there? Now, you can do it, but like I said, most of your research or most of your predetermined consumptions of what that place is based off of stereotypes. You have to experience these things firsthand. It's the only way that you will effectively be able to create this type of story or create this type of characters. This is the biggest problem facing the American comic book industry, because you have so many writers. Have you ever wondered why characters of minorities, minority characters of different ethnicities, or even female characters for that matter, have such a hard time with their books succeeding? Why? Because these characters aren't written well. Why? Because most of these characters are written by Caucasian males who don't know anything about these ethnicities or about women. That's the truth. I mean, you can see it in the writing. That's the reason why. This isn't something you can just research. You have to experience it firsthand. So like I said, I think that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest problem when you're addressing this topic. Good and bad examples of their portrayal. Good examples of characters of other ethnicities that have been portrayed well. Like I said, these characters have been done well, and they've been done badly. You're talking about Jon Stewart, the Green Lantern. You're talking about Black Panther. You're talking about I'm trying to think of another character. Give me a minute, because there's so few of them. Of course, Static Shock. Who actually, I believe, has been done well, more so than he's been done badly. But just take those three characters for an example. Oh, Storm from the X-Men. That's another character that I think has been done well, more so than she's been done badly. But like I said, all four of those characters have had their fair share of being done well and being done badly. It depends on the writer. Usually a writer, too often, like I said, writers fall into tokens. They fall into stereotypes. They fall into tokenism. They fall into stereotypes, and they don't really understand what it takes to write an effective character of a different ethnicity. And there are so many bad examples. I mean, hell, where do I start? Choco Love from Shaman King. Hell. Oh man, there's so many bad examples. I don't even know. Choco Love is the first one that leaps off the page at me. I would go as far, now granted, take this, what I'm about to say, with a grain of salt, because I haven't read this character. This is based off of what I've been told. But Miles Morales, the current Ultimate Spider-Man, I believe that's the Ultimate Spider-Man, I don't think they're doing a good job writing him. But like I said, take that with a grain of salt, because I haven't read it. This is based solely off of what other people have told me. But I don't think they're doing a good job with him. Oh man. And of course, how many bad examples. I mean, once again, to use the female perspective, how many times have they fucked up female characters in American comic books? I mean, fuck it, let's face it. I mean, where does the list start? With Wonder Woman, with fucking Supergirl, Power Girl, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk. I mean, fuck, where does the list? I mean, Jesus Christ. These motherfuckers can't write female characters. I'm not even going to bring up the Starfire or the Harley Quinn fiascos. I mean, for fuck's sake, people. And I mean, even in Japanese anime and manga, how many female characters are just destroyed and thrown to the wayside because these motherfuckers cannot write female characters? I mean, geez Louise, people. So many bad examples. I mean, shit, it's oh man. Whew, Lord have mercy, Jesus. And should a fiction take place in a different world, include groups based off of Africans or Asians just because? Like I said, okay, at that point, I think it's based off of your story. If your story needs characters of that type, then by all means go for it. If you don't, then don't throw them in there just, like I said, don't throw them in there just to be politically correct. I would even argue for the most part, don't use a character of a different ethnicity if there's no point to them being that ethnicity. And like I said, there's a fine line between the two, because too many times they fall into stereotypes. But like I said, don't just have a token black guy just to be there because, you know, do something with him. Have some purpose behind him being there. To use another example, to use another personal example, a story that I wrote, my second manga series, which I am actually now adapting into a novel series. I was in the middle of the third story arc before I introduced characters of a different ethnicity. And yeah, I kind of ran into that wall with tokenism and whatnot. But those characters, I didn't know it at the time, but those characters became very central, very significant to the series. So their role, their being there, means something. And then I went back into my other two story arcs that didn't feature these characters, and I started mentioning them, and I started incorporating them, so that, you know, if you were to read the story now, if you were to read that story from beginning, you know about them. By the time you get to the third story arc, now you see them. So that type of thing, like I said, if you're going to do it, have a point behind it. Have some type of purpose. Have it mean something other than them just being there because, or them just being there because you don't want to offend somebody. Because I'll tell you this, you will offend more people if you feature characters of different ethnicities that have no purpose, rather than you not featuring them at all. That's the truth. You will offend more if you just have them and don't do anything with them than if they just weren't there. Because most people would argue, if it's a useless character, then why are they there? So yeah, so I hope I did a good job tackling that topic. And I want to go ahead and thank Ion the Spire for the great suggestion, and I want to thank you all for thumbing it up. I mean, it got huge thumbs up in like the first day, so I want to thank you all for that. Now, with that being said, I'm going to wrap this video up That's my 20-minute marker, so I'm gonna wrap this video up. A few things I do want to mention before I close out this video. Many of you may have noticed that I am now I'm now incorporating the approve only option for the comments. The comments are no longer automatic. They're all based off of approval. And I'm not sure if, like I said, I'm still playing around with it. I'm not sure if that is discouraging some people from commenting, or if I'm just not getting notifications. I'm not sure. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever used it. So I really need you all's help with this. Like I said, comment below as always with suggestions for topics for next week's discussion of the week. Comment always just comment as you usually do. Now, I will say this. You know that I've always done the thumb it up, because the ones with the most thumbs up are the ones that I take on for the next week. This is going to be a little bit more difficult to implement, because there are some comments that I may not be able to get to at the time, so they won't automatically pop up. This is what I'm going to do. I am going to be screening this video and its comments very closely for tonight. I'm going to upload this as soon as I'm done with it, and I'm going to be screening it very closely so that I can get these comments approved as soon as possible, so that you all can see them and thumb them up. But let's try this out. Let's see what happens, because I know this video brings in a lot of comments. This segment usually brings in a lot of comments. So we'll see how the traffic goes. We'll see how this goes. But with that said, I want to go ahead and I want to hold off on the suggestions for the next discussion of the week, because next week the discussion of the week will be on a little break, because I'm uploading my predictions for Game of Thrones Season 2, and that will take the place of next week's discussion of the week video segment. But this is what I want to do. After that, what I want to do 2 weeks of Q&As. Now, I've done Q&As before on Blog TV, live Q&As, but I want to do Q&As, and I want some really good questions. Now, like I said, the gates are going to be open for this, and of course, the questions in which I respond to will be discretionary. But I'm interested in the sort of questions I'm interested in are the ones about myself, or my opinions, or my view on things that normally I wouldn't be able to answer. I'm not talking about the type of questions that are discussion of the week topics. Those aren't the ones I'm really looking for, because like I said, I have a venue for that, the discussion of the week segment. I'm looking for questions that otherwise I wouldn't be able to answer in any type of video I've already done, maybe outside of, say, a vlog, which I've only done one vlog. So I'm looking for questions about more things about myself, things that you all may be curious about. This is more so of like a fan mail session, where you all send me fan questions and I answer them, and I want to do that for 2 weeks. So next week, Game of Thrones prediction, Season 2 predictions. Week after, Q&A 1. Week after that, Q&A 2. So in this week's discussion of the week, comments, leave me your questions, and we'll see what happens. But with that said, what else you can look forward to later this week? I got my Ultimate Fighter recap is going to be tomorrow night. Saturday, Thundercats is back with Season 2. I'll be reviewing that. And then Sunday, we'll wrap up my month of Miyazaki with my review of Castle in the Sky. So until next time, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off. And until next time, peace.